right. Today, I'm joined by Mitch Comstock, recurring guest Mitch Comstock, the Senior Product Marketing Manager at LeadIQ. Mitch has been a product marketer for more than 5 years, spending time at Flex Essential and Akita Box before joining LeadIQ. Also, going to be a featured speaker at Compete Week 2022. So make sure you register, catch Mitch's session there, along with plenty of other awesome sessions. Mitch, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Adam. Thanks for having me.
It's almost a year to the day, I think, since you joined us last. Maybe it was around January, Mark, and a lot of things have changed since we last spoke. As we know, the market's a little bit more volatile right now. There's a lot more uncertainty. There's budget freezes. There's potential layoffs, reorganizations, restructuring. And what we want to talk about today is how Compete experts can make sure that Compete stays top of mind, business critical, and off the chopping block. So Mitch, can you share a little bit about your experience so far with getting the initial momentum for Compete and keeping that top of mind amongst the organization amidst the last year or so?
Yeah. So when I joined LeadIQ about a year and a half ago, I was starting the Compete program kind of from scratch. You know, like a lot of organizations, we had random documents, people doing different things, but coming in, building the business case for that Compete program was a big priority, and it's a big lift for any, especially solo product marketers or people who are just starting kind of a product marketing team. But then after you get the buy-in, whether you're getting software or it's just to get resources or whatever you're looking to get from that, I think what I overlooked and what I think a lot of people overlook is you have to continue that momentum, kind of like you said. It's not just getting the buy-in, then it's done. It's a daily, a weekly, a monthly thing. And with all the changes that have gone on over the last year for a lot of companies, it's a good time to kind of reset and take a look at, where's your Compete program stand today and how can you continue to build it into something bigger and better going forward?
So we've talked offline about this. What do you see as those most important stakeholder groups that you need to be in touch with, that you need to be top of mind with in order to keep momentum, keep yourself off the chopping block, so to speak?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's. I think the biggest thing is just making Compete visible from a product marketing side, making sure that really you're seen, or whoever your team is seen, as kind of the experts that can come in and help when it comes to Compete. But the biggest groups or the most important groups I look at is sales leadership being number one. Anytime if you're selling software, you're always looking for executive buy-in or an executive sponsor. Same thing with Compete. You sort of need that. And so with sales, a lot of times being our biggest consumers for Compete, getting the leadership alignment and making sure that they stay, up to date with what you're doing and you're staying up to date with what sellers need is really important. I think the second one is sales enablement. If you have that function, whether it's within marketing or within product marketing or it's a separate group, it's important to stay aligned with them, but also you can sort of drive some of what sales enablement's doing based on what you see in Compete. And then the third is the sales reps, that groundswell of how you can help and how you can get intel from them and then share the intel that you're putting together. Those three groups, and they're very sales focused, but when I think about Compete, sales is always number one on what we're trying to, who I'm trying to serve.
And especially today, you need to be able to prove that you're impacting revenue, that you're tied to revenue, that you're close to the revenue engine, and that your the Compete work that you're doing is moving the needle. So that makes logical sense that you've got these as your key stakeholders. Can you share with me then sales leadership, for example? What was that like to get them on board? What were the things that you did to get them on board? And now fast forward a year from now, are there things you wish you could have continued to do a little bit better, or things you wanted, if you look back like, these are the opportunities I could have had to have these people be Compete supporters, Compete fans for life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I initially did it, we sort of brought, what documents do we have today? We had a competitor Slack channel that got used sometimes, not super frequently. We had some documents that ranged from, some of them were a year or two old. Most of them were created by sales reps, just, because they needed something. So they start to just put together a list of things they knew about competitors or heard. And I think that was actually a pretty easy sell to the sales leadership of like, hey, this is what we have today. And, they've been in the business a long time. So they knew, that's not good enough. That's not what the reps need. I think after getting sort of that initial buy-in though, as things changed and LeadIQ was, had, new people come in, we had changes to, how the org was structured. I think what I would definitely do differently is try to get a regular cadence to stay on top of and keep Compete top of mind for them. Cause you do the initial and then it kind of gets forgotten. They've got a million things on their mind. Most of it's around pipeline. And Compete's just a small part of what goes into that. So, really trying to keep that top of mind, especially if you do have changes within your org where, not everybody thinks about Compete the same way, especially in sales. People have different ideas of what a battle card looks like or what is important for sales to have. So, it's really vital, especially when new people come in, but even as you go throughout the year to understand, is everybody still aligned on what reps need and what's important? And then if you're not, you could start to discuss, what's the best way forward? Which of these makes sense?
What I'm hearing from you is that sort of, this is mentality. Actually, our product marketing team always mention this, and it's something that I've kind of taken into our own work here. It's like build in public and even like share the vision, share the process in public, because like you mentioned there, things are going to change, needs are going to change. And if people don't even know what is happening behind closed doors in the world of Compete, then how can you tailor what you're doing? How can you support their needs if it's that kind of chasm? There's a bit of a split between them. What you mentioned, and I'm thinking like there might be listeners that are thinking, oh crap, as they hear that, oh yeah, I got initial buy-in when I built the business case for resources, tech, whatever it is, for justifying having a Compete program within the org. But I haven't followed up with my CMO or my director of sales. I haven't followed up in the last 6 months. And you mentioned that hindsight, regular cadence or touch point. What would that look like? So if someone's now like getting a little bit nervous, they're like, crap, I need to get these regular touch points. What would the cadence be? And what would you actually deliver to someone that's an executive that has different needs, probably needs information shared differently than a seller or something like that?
Yeah. I think, I think kind of that sales leadership, they're not necessarily going to care about, how often this battle card was accessed by a sales rep. I think what's really important, and you can wrap it into if you're doing a competitive newsletter or some kind of regular cadence in there, but, share some of that anecdotal feedback that you've gotten from sales, whether that's, you were on a call with a customer helping out in a deal, or somebody used a battle card or used a one pager or something that you had kind of created from your Compete program. And you can sort of stack those, I have a folder on my computer where I take screenshots of Slack messages and stuff like that to just save for later for things like that, you should surface those early and often, because a lot of times the sales leadership doesn't know where reps get that information. They're very top level. They're just looking to see deals close. They're not in the weeds to know how a rep necessarily did it or who helped and all those details. So that's kind of how I'm bringing that up to the sales leadership.
So painting the picture, you said they don't necessarily see everything that goes into that deal one, but
Yep.
and the rep knows that Compete and the information that they had is critical winning those neck and neck deals, the ones that they should have won. Compete is obviously, it's not the sole piece of the pie. We're not taking full credit from sellers here, but it is a critical piece. And how do you go about getting seller qualitative feedback? sellers to partner with you to give Compete the recognition it deserves, so to speak?
I think that just comes, organically and naturally if you're delivering value. If what you're putting together, and this gets into when we think about sales reps and how you can support them, but if you're giving them stuff that's helping, a lot of times I've found that sales reps are very appreciative of that kind of work, because again, they're driven by closed deals, by hitting quota, and if they're getting help from product marketing or for Compete to do that, they're usually pretty quick to give you a shout out. A lot of times, though, it's privately directly to you, which is where you want to save some of that. But yeah, I think it really just comes down to value, and you could do things around if you're doing a competitive survey or a sales confidence survey, like that's one way you can get it sort of anonymously. But yeah, and I think building that relationship with them is the other part of that, is, having some making sure they know who you are, they know your face, and they feel comfortable coming to you. The more you can build that, the more likely they are to sort of recognize that support.
And what you mentioned there, sales have quota to hit, and it's more difficult than ever before for them to hit quota. So they're looking. They need all the support they can get. So really it is this opportunity for Compete to be the thing that helps them through these difficult times when their pipeline might be a little bit more dried up than it was before. And what I love is building that genuine relationship. You mentioned if you deliver value, it will come. And thinking of it in my own context, like from the Clue side of things, working on the content team over here, one of the concepts I stole from, who did I saw it online, but it was great. And you mentioned that like those internal messages are great, but hey, sometimes you got to stand up and vouch for yourself and share with leadership those moments. I like to do something on our content team, which is like the trophy room, where you pull clips from Gong, people shouting out the content, or those sellers, those disparate Slack messages that were really cool. But hey, maybe your CEO, maybe your director of sales didn't see that. But when you collect all of those data points, because those qualitative feedback, they really are data points, you pull them together into one slide or a collection, then it makes it a bit more powerful, right? To share to executives, this is what we're doing on the product marketing Compete side. And this is only a sliver of what I'm doing as a product marketer.
Yeah, you definitely need to toot your own horn a little bit. Because they're not going to go out of their way to find it. So bringing it to them, and wrapping it into some of the deliverables you're already doing there. But you definitely touched on something of, deals are becoming more competitive. The way that the market has gone, longer deal cycles, the scrutiny around, what we're buying, all of that just means that Compete becomes even more important. So, it's not that sales doesn't care about Compete, but again, they're heads down focused on, so you have to kind of push your way in a little bit and deliver some of that value, and some of the recognition that you're getting.
So the second stakeholder group you mentioned there was sales enablement. Like you need to partner with sales enablement. You're in a unique example, I believe, as the product marketer. There's probably folks listening today that's the product marketer, solo Compete team of one, wearing many hats. You're probably the researcher, the analyzer, and the enabler all in one. And that's what you were originally. And then sales enablement came into the picture. The function got established at LeadIQ after you'd set up Compete.
Yep.
So what was that like with sales enablement coming? You know that from a Compete standpoint, enablement is such a core piece to what we need to do to be successful. So what was that like when sales enablement came in?
Yeah, it's different if you've been running some enablement or all of enablement. It's definitely for the better, having a team that can sit there and do it, where product marketing or Compete is delivering the content. I think the trap that you might find yourself in is, if sales enablement's driving the entire agenda for what that month's training looks like, you as product marketing or Compete, you still have a seat at the table. And when you see things that need to happen, you shouldn't be afraid to reach out and make that happen. Make the case on why we need to do training on this competitor, or talk about this trend that we're seeing from multiple of our competitors, things like that. And I think that's where having some of the data, around if you have win-loss or even just understanding how often competitors are coming up in deals, that's one good way to do it. As you see new announcements come out, things like that, if you have a Gong or a call recording service and you can hear some, common words that are coming up or common objections that you're hearing, that's where you could start to make that case using some of that. But yeah, I think, don't be too passive with sales enablement. They're looking for material to help the sales team. That's what they're there to do. So make sure you're driving some of that from the product marketing compete side so that it doesn't become, take a back seat to everything else. Because there's always a million things that they're trying to get the sales reps to do.
What kind of enablement sessions have you found have been the most sticky for sales reps or the most valuable?
I think anything that has, proof or some sort of like something that they can watch and see in real time or real life. So that's where the call recording is really great. You can show, I've had examples of, a competitor has changed their positioning and I go into our call recording into Gong and I find that one of our solutions engineers nailed the objection before I even had a chance to put it together. And that's just so easy to just take that and say, hey, if you hear this, we know they're talking about XYZ, here's a best practice response from so-and-so. And then you're giving them the good answer, but you're also shouting out somebody who, had done a good job on that, which is another way to build some of that trust with them. Those I think are always way more valuable than us going through slides or, talking about news stories. Like get some real, or even just pull the objections you're handling or hearing from prospects. Get some of that from your sales team, whether it's just them telling you, or like I said, if you have actual video and recordings of them saying it.
To your point, though, sales enablement isn't just compete. And there's probably a lot of needs. There's probably a lot of things they need to fill for a seller. There's probably a lot of seller requests. But what have you done, or what have you started to do to get your foot in the door and showcase the sales enablement? Hey, we should be running more sessions on competitors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you're probably meeting with sales enablement or having some kind of regular check-in with them. But when I think about one of the things I started doing to bring some more credence or some more power to what I'm talking about from compete is I've actually started tracking the ad hoc requests I get for compete. So, every week, sure, everybody that's listening to this gets this where, sales rep A reaches out about this thing, sales rep B on Wednesday reaches out about that thing. But having kind of just a running list of all those, and then you could start to see some trends that you might miss otherwise. And then using that list to bring it to, into a sales enablement meeting to say, hey, in the last month, I've had 10 reps ask me about this competitor. Like we should probably do a quick training, or I could do a video about it. Like you can work around the tactical on that, but that helps again show, A, what's going on in your world, so that sales enablement, that's good for sales leadership too, to see something like that. But it also has kind of the proof point to say, this is what I'm hearing. Can we do something on it? Or I feel like we should be doing something on that. So that's had some pretty good success so far. And yeah.
It's really showcasing like the demand for what you provide, or like your service, really. It's another way, like we mentioned at the top, same with the executive. They don't know how the sausage is made. They just need to know it's being made. But it's really upon you as a compete person to build in public, show your work, show where that demand is, and show where you're filling in gaps within an organization. Especially if there's a new sales enablement function that's developed. Like you need to start working in tandem with them. There's an opportunity there. If you don't communicate, if you don't work with them, for compete to fall to the side, or there's another set of hands that can help you bring compete into what you're doing to support reps to win deals, again, especially when it's harder and harder to win deals. Which gets us to that last stakeholder group, sellers themselves. Having sellers in the field that are not only using your content, but are vouching for your content and for you as well as that compete expert. What are some of the ways that you've been working hand in hand with reps? And for, again, listeners, what are the things that they could do tomorrow to start building a really strong rapport with sellers are going to go to bat for them.
Yeah, it's all about staying close. And there were some things shared on LinkedIn recently, when we're doing compete or sales enablement or whatever, you're not every rep is going to take what you're delivering, especially if you've got seasoned reps, they've at your company for a long time. Like, they know a lot of this stuff because they've lived it, they've done it. So, but when we're thinking about sales reps, there are sales reps who need your help and need your content. So it's about finding those, and just staying close to them, especially, if you have new hires coming in, that's a great batch to sort of start working with. And like, one of the things that I've started doing is, every quarter at least, or every couple months, I'm trying to meet with all our sales reps for 15 minutes. And I ask them 4 questions around, how's our messaging landing? What are you hearing from prospects and customers in terms of, common themes or common trends that they're talking about? What competitors are coming up a lot, and, where do you need help in terms of content, training? And those 4 questions, that gets you through those 15 minutes. But if you do that regularly, they start to expect that and really that gets to the heart of how we can help an individual rep as they, do come up against more competitors, more competitive deals in today's market, for sure.
You also mentioned, I think you mentioned a little bit before as well, around surveying reps. What are sort of the questions or the findings that you're getting with these surveys to reps?
Yeah. So we do a sales confidence survey, which Compete is part of that. But really what I'm looking for from that is to get a general sense across the sales team, how are we feeling when we talk about this competitor, or, how is our messaging landing on a scale of 1 to 5? And it's something really good to just track, trends over time. So you want to do it on like a regular cadence, but, that's a good way to get a lot of feedback. And then those kind of 15-minute sessions are the more personal, like, what are you hearing specifically? And I've been able to pinpoint, a common theme amongst, the 5 or 6 reps I talk to each month in those sessions to see things that, we might miss in the larger survey, which is more, what content do we need to do? What might we need to reinforce some things? I think that gets at a more higher level when we think about Compete and what we're doing.
That's interesting. You're kind of pairing the two together to paint a clear picture every time, right? What I love from a survey standpoint, it's not science, but it is a way to kind of, even like what you mentioned about like kind of tallying up ad hoc requests on specific objections or competitors. Like, we're not going deep into your CRM data. It's a little bit of tallying on the side of your desk, but it is valuable, these kind of data points like that. And then if you color it in with like those specific quotes, specific examples, here's what I heard from Enterprise AE who tackles our biggest deals. Like, if he's saying something or she's saying something, then shoot, it matters. Mm-hmm. You also mentioned something around staying close. And I think there's something around staying close and also being of value to these reps. So what are some of the ways that you are of value, so to really?
Yeah, I think it comes with building those relationships, but there's a lot of ways that we can bring value from a product marketing Compete side. I've sat on customer calls when there's been a specific Compete question. Like, I just did that a couple of weeks ago where prospect heard this from this customer and they brought me in as kind of the Compete expert to, provide my point of view on that. So yeah, I think there's a ton of ways that we can do it, whether that's actual deal support like that. It's updates to the battle cards, it's supporting enablement. It really depends on your org and how, I want to say how mature your sales team is, how mature the enablement is. But I would definitely say start small. If you're starting from scratch, just talking to the reps on a day-to-day basis will start to build that relationship where then they start to look at you as, someone I can go to for questions. If, I need specific help in a deal, it's a good way to start going about it.
Absolutely. Staying close, building relationship, and then there's also that like regular cadence, that flow of communication. Is it your newsletter? Is it updated battle cards? Is it those just kind of personal touch points that you mentioned and put in 15 in the calendar? Like there's not one panacea to this. It's what I'm hearing from you is it's consistency and multiple touch points, really. Because you're really trying to provide value, and not what leadership, what sales enablement, and what sellers need is very different. And how you communicate, the channels you reach them, the messages you share is completely different, really. But you need these three groups to be on your side, to be the people that when they're in a neck and neck deal, they're struggling to come up with the answers to really closing a deal against a competitor. They're going to look to you. They need to think. The first thing they think about is, shoot, Mitch probably has the answer, or Mitch knows someone that has the answer, or Mitch said something 2 weeks ago. Let me go back to that. It's really, how do you stay top of mind with these three different levels, I guess, of management, or three different levels, and especially groups that are that close to revenue right now, which matters more than ever.
Yeah. I mean, and it's tough if we bring it back to, building the momentum and keeping that momentum, doing this week in, week out. It's hard. And especially as changes happen, sales reps come and go, leadership changes. But it is really important, because you don't want to end up in a situation where, you're thinking about compete one way and sales leadership has a completely different idea. And that might be why your content doesn't get used, or, you're not hearing from reps because they're not being taught or not thinking about it the same way that you are and what you're delivering. So, it's really hard, but it comes back to what you said at the beginning of build publicly, or be out there. Like, we talk about on our marketing team, we talk about, we want to overload our sales team with leads to the point that we then have to adjust. You can think about compete the same way. Like, I want to be overloaded with compete requests, and then I can start to put up guardrails of, what are we going to do? What are we not going to do? But you got to get to there first before you can start doing that. So that's a good problem to have if you start getting into that. Absolutely.
This is great, Mitch. I've got a couple rapid fire questions that we like to ask our guests. Are you keen to dive in here?
Let's do it.
All right. First one. You wake up tomorrow and you've got 10x the budget for compete. How are you spending it?
Oh, dang. Well, in my role, we'd hire a specific compete person, because we're still product marketing, wearing a lot of different hats. So, I mean, I would hire specifically on that. I would bring in some kind of win-loss consulting or software or something. Something that can really own part of that and help us automate that process, because that's another, we didn't really talk about that, but that's a good data point to have to feed to a lot of these groups. I don't know if that gets me to 10x, but I mean, I think
very expensive hire.
Yeah, but I think at least having one, and especially with the way that LeadIQ's evolved, we could even have two people focused on different industries and features there. Those would be two that I go for sure.
What's one thing that you individually are working on to close out the year strong in compete?
Yeah, so we're starting the process now. It's going to make me sound whatever, but we're starting the process of win-loss now. So getting our reports in from Salesforce on competitors, where we stand today. What I'd like to do going into next year is to actually start doing some of those interviews with customers and prospects. But we got to know where we start there. So I'm really excited about that. But it'll be good data to have and something we've been missing so far.
What's one book you'd recommend to our listeners?
Oh man, shoot! I'm trying to think of what I just read. So I'm a big history guy, and I just watched the Netflix movie for this. But if you like history, like I do, All Quiet on the Western Front. Also, the Netflix movie was really, really good.
Was it?
Yeah, it's a good watch. But yeah, that I think would be my top of mind one that I'd go to.
All right, I got my Friday night booked. And last question, producer Ben has shamelessly seeded this question for me because he knows you're a baseball fan. So, favorite baseball player and who's the greatest baseball player of all time?
Oh, so greatest of all time. I still think Ken Griffey is the greatest. Had the most talent out of anybody. He got hurt near the end of his career, so he doesn't have the some of the records that he might have. But that swing was something. Probably the best looking swing you'll ever see. What was the other part of it? Best ever, and then my favorite or
favorite.
Oh, my favorite. I mean, right now, I'm a big Bryce Harper fan. Just in terms of, really talented, but he's not as good as Mike Trout, but he's got more swag to him, and he's more fun to watch with some of that. So I'll say him, and he just had a good postseason, so it's a good time for it too.
A little more moxie. And Compete Pros, you can take that lesson. Have a bit more moxie. Have a bit more self-promotion, because you need to get yourself out there. We know that Compete is business critical, and it's upon us to make sure that the entire organization sees Compete the same way. Mitch, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll catch everyone else next week.